Okay, Sergio, if you click the screen, you should be back in control.
Okay,
Yep, perfect.
I'm in control.
Yep, you're in control. And we'll just wait a couple more seconds and we'll get started. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for joining us for a webinar on navigating FDA food imports. It's co-presented by EAS Consulting Group, Certified Laboratories, and L&L Trade Law Alpha Broker Corporation. We're looking forward to bringing you a wealth of information today that will help you to understand what is required of importing food to the US, why products get detained, the various types of detention, and next steps on gaining product release. Our presenters today include Sergio Alzano, Jr., partner, L&L Trade Law, Dean Leaman, Business Development Manager at Certified Laboratories, and Angel Suarez, an EAS independent consultant and expert in food imports. Mr. Lozano is a founding partner of L&L Trade Law. His practice focuses on customs law, FDA law, corporate contracts, and international trade law. Mr. Lozano is also a licensed U.S. customs broker who has conducted customs business before Customs and Border Protection and the other partner government agencies in various ports of entry throughout the U.S. Dean Leaman is an expert in international imports and exports and advises clients in the event of FDA detention without physical examination. He is also a member of the National Fisheries Institute, technical and import committees. Dean is a recognized asset for importers and exporters of FDA regulated merchandise, providing personal service with value and integrity. Angel Suarez is a former supervisor, consumer safety officer with FDA, where he had responsibility of import enforcement in areas of seafood and low acid canned food, as well as foreign inspections, warning letters, detentions, import alerts, import bulletins, and sample collections. He is the co-author of numerous publications, including portions of the National Shellfish Sanitation Program's Shellfish Equipment Construction Guide. In addition, he has helped develop training courses, including the FDA Certified Better Process Control School, inspection and sampling of abnormal food metal containers, and the FDA Shellfish Officer Standardization course. We will save all questions for the end, but if you do have questions today, please do write them either into the chat box or into the Q&A box. And with that, I will, Sergio, I'll mute my microphone, which will take control away from you for a moment. Just click your screen as soon as I do. Thanks all for joining us again, and I'll turn it over to Sergio.
Great, I believe now I do have control of the screen. Let me confirm that. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Normally I'd be looking out at a crowd and saying hello to everybody, but because we're doing it through a webinar, I'm looking at the same thing everybody else should be looking at. As it was mentioned previously, my name is Sergio Alzano. I am a partner of my law firm, and as well, I'm a licensed customs broker working for my family business, which is Alpha Brokers Corporation. I've been in this business since I was 14 years old, and I'm now 31. So I was kind of born into this industry. And today I want to go over a couple of things specifically about US Customs, FDA, and the modern day issues faced by importers, exporters, and just a general understanding of the entire process. So with that, I'm going to start with brokers and ACE. For many of you, most importers use some kind of a US Customs broker in order to be able to facilitate the clearance of cargo coming into the country. Now, those brokers transmit all the data that is requested from you as the importers or from the suppliers that provide that information to the importers as the cargo is being prepared to come into the country. Now, everybody hears this word ACE. If you're part of the industry, you understand that ACE is the automated commercial environment, which CBP, who is the agency that is in control of all transmissions going into for a product coming into the country, right? And that is how all communications are transmitted. Prior to transmitting any information, the broker's responsibility is to ensure that all documents received and that are presented match. meaning that all the documents you submit as importers or as suppliers are properly prepared and all the documents make sense. The broker transmits entries to FDA and all other partner government agencies through ACE simultaneously with the transmission from the CBP cargo clearance. This means that along with all the data that's requested for CBP, additional pieces of information or data elements are required for FDA clearance of your product. And additionally, brokers work as facilitators of information between the government agencies and the importers, meaning they are I would say the megaphone for you as an importer. They are the individuals that transmit all the initial data that allow for the government agencies to see the information that you are presenting through your bill of lading, airway bill, your invoices, your packing list, and any additional documents that are required for the clearance of FDA product. With that said, I always think at the beginning of any presentation, one of the easiest things to be able to look at is kind of a diagram of where we should be whenever you're having any kind of an import that deals with FDA, so everyone gets a general understanding of how the system actually works. So at first, and I believe the most important piece to any of this, is the review and verification of paperwork with consultants to ensure no issues will arise. What does this mean? This means that before any data is sent over to your broker or before any data is transmitted through the ACE system, verification that all the documents match, in many cases, is the most important piece, or verification of things like FDA importer numbers, verifications of whether something is on an import alert. And again, all these phrases that I'm talking about, they're going to be further discussed throughout this entire seminar. Next, the information that is collected is verified and it is transmitted by the broker for an import securities filing 10+2. What is that? That is the initial 10 data elements that must be submitted 24 hours prior to the cargo's departure at origin. With that, the information that's then needed in order to be able to present customs clearance is the invoice, which includes the packer producer's FDA registration, the information on who the buyer is, additionally who the seller is, and your bill of lading, which match the information associated to the invoice. Once the ISF is submitted through the ACE system, a confirmation is received that CBP has received that initial data. The cargo then departs, and throughout the entire course of its transportation from the location of origin to its destination in the United States is the data collection portion of the actual exercise of any clearance. During that time, the broker or importers themselves collect all the data and ensure that it is properly prepared to be submitted through the ACE system to CBP. Once it enters CBP's system through the ACE system, it then transmits the additional information to its partner government agencies. Those government agencies, typically with FDA products, can be products that require NOAA, or any product that would require FDA. They would receive the different data elements that are required for that clearance. Typically at that point in time, it can be transmitted up to 30 days prior to the cargo's arrival, and 5 days prior to its scheduled arrival date, FDA will then give some sort of a notification or some sort of an answer. Once the information is received and FDA confirms receipt of the information, the next step is that a prior notice confirmation response is received by the broker through the ACE system. In that time, FDA will respond with either a may proceed, hold, or possibly even directly a detention notice. And that's the basic process, which sounds very beautiful and it's very easy to put into a slide with 6 different figures, but I leave the last piece saying depends, because as an attorney, when you're in law school, one of the first things you're always told is you ask a question, and whenever you ask that question, your professor would immediately answer with depends. Why? Because there's no one answer as to what would happen depending on whether there is a may proceed, hold, or detention notice. And there's many different avenues that can follow in this process. Therefore, There is no actual answer. It all depends on the different processes, which we will go through, and you'll hear from all of us today. So what are the common FDA issues faced by importers, and how do we understand them? One of the first things is, who is the importer? Next, what is an FDA hold, detention, and an import alert? And lastly, how does an FDA product code come into play in any of this information? So let's start with, who is the importer? In many cases, a lot of individuals believe that the importer is whoever is declared as the importer of record for CBP. However, that's not the exact case. There can be many situations where the CBP importer of record is not the same as the FDA importer of record. Who is the CBP importer of record? It's the individual that is responsible for the customs clearance and will be responsible for liquidated damages if there are any fines or redelivery notices issued. This means that the redelivery is issued to the CBP importer of record, which will be found liable if the shipment is not properly handled. But at the same time, the FDA importer of record is the individual responsible for the shipment for FDA purposes. This individual will be required to answer for any recalls that FDA may issue, and individuals that can be placed on the import alert for failure to clearance. Meaning, the FDA importer of record is responsible for anything involving the FDA, but when a redelivery notice is issued, it's issued through CBP. Therefore, the importer of record will be responsible for the redelivery of the product that may be violative by the FDA importer of record. In most cases, they are the same individual, but it's very key to understand that each individual may be different. Next, what is an FDA hold? What is detention? And what are import alerts? And how are they same, but also at the same time different? And where are you in the process, and how do I proceed? Well, you'll hear throughout today that an FDA hold can be issued because of an import alert. An FDA hold can be issued because of a random occurrence by FDA's predict system, or the FDA hold can be done for various different reasons associated with additional shipments that may be coming in by different importers. Therefore, the FDA hold, if it's not made preceded, is the first step into what you do next. In many cases, the initial step for the FDA hold is the request for documentation. That documentation will require you to present the same documents submitted to CBP through the electronic transmission to be backed up with the actual paperwork that comes with that shipment. In that information, what FDA is looking for is to match the information that was initially submitted with what they have in their own databases. How are they different? An FDA hold can occur due to an import alert, or it can occur as something random. Depending on whether it is random or if it's because of an import alert will depend on how you proceed. Meaning, if you have an FDA hold and there is a sampling being requested by FDA that's considered a random sampling, does not mean that immediately there's going to be a private lab analysis. It means that FDA is sampling for its own purposes based off of their own data, and it's just one of the normal pieces of the actual puzzle of how an import works. However, when something is for an import alert or it's being detained due to that, then that's where different pieces of this puzzle, which would be someone like our other panelists, would be involved in order to be able to remove or help somebody get off of these import alerts. Now, we mention import alerts a lot, and on the bottom, you'll see there's a reference that allows you to take a look at the different import alerts. That link will allow you to gain access to finding the information based off of country, based off of industry, based off of the number assigned to each alert, and based off of publication. This is a direct FDA system, which should always be considered a tool that as importers and exporters, you're able to verify whether the people that you're working with or purchasing from are in good standing with the FDA. Again, it's one of those first steps that we saw in the diagram that would allow for the review of information to ensure you don't run into situations once the cargo has already been purchased, you've already put some sort of a deposit on your cargo, and now you're stuck with this issue coming into the United States. So the next question I would believe would be logical would be, well, what is an import alert? And here you're going to see an example of what is known as an import alert. And this is specifically import alert 1605. This deals with mahi-mahi that may have histamines and decomposition by findings of the FDA. In this import alert, the first thing you'll see is why there is the actual alert, and you're able to read a little bit about it. Next, you'll see the different countries that are of concern to the FDA, followed by the guidance of the FDA for these different products. And next, specifically in this one, you're going to see that there are 3 types of pieces to that alert. 1, there's an alert that's countrywide, meaning any product that would be coming from Ecuador or Taiwan would immediately fall under this import alert. Therefore, when FDA receives any information of country of origin or country of production being Ecuador or Taiwan, it will result in them realizing that this product must be stopped and detained because it's coming from one of these countries. Next, you'll see that there is something called a red list, which will go into further detail by one of the other individuals in the panelists to be able to describe what a red list is. And there's also on this alert what's known as a green list, meaning product that is allowed in from the particular country that has the alert because they've met the requirements necessary. Additionally, as you'll see, I'm going to go back here, you're going to see these numbers right here, 16A-51. That is your FDA product code. FDA product code is one of the ways that, other than the tariff classification submitted through CBP, FDA specifically subcategorizes the product you're bringing in into these different fields. You'll see below, it separates it by the actual industry, its class, meaning that it would be its class, its subclass, the process indicator code, and the different product groups. So in this case, 16 indicates fisheries and seafood products. A indicates that it's fish. G indicates the packing. And T indicates its actual status, and then the actual product itself. This is one of the most commonly used methods with which FDA is able to subcategorize and allow their system to come up with whether they will have a random sampling or it must be stopped for import alerts. So with that, I'm going to give you a couple of my closing considerations that hopefully you'll be thinking of as the different panelists speak. It's very simple. It's, when do you believe you need help? Well, it all depends on how seasoned you are as an importer or how green you are as an importer, in the sense that you haven't had these types of issues. So you should be seeking help from consultants in order to be able to prevent you from hitting these pitfalls. And why should you seek consultants? Because they're going to be able to access this information a lot quicker and alleviate a lot of issues that you won't have to deal with, because one of your biggest concerns is making sure this product comes into the country and you're finding the right price for it. And what are the signs that you should be looking for when you know you need to reach out? If you hear a question and you have no answer for it, in other words, if your importer or if your broker asks you, what's the FDA registration number for this product? What's the form that it's coming in? Do you know if it's on a green list? Do you know if it's on a red list? Do you know if the country has any sort of a hold? All of these questions would be key indicators saying, if you can't answer that, you should be asking people outside that are experts in order to be able to deal with that. With that, I'm gonna turn it over to one of our experts that I would say is Dean Leaman from Certified Laboratories.
Okay, Dean, you should have control of the screen.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Sergio, thank you for that information, and we'll move on. So yeah, the FDA regulates a lot of products coming to the United States. This is just a quick graph showing the types of products that are regulated by the FDA. And we deal in the food, cosmetics, dietary supplements, and tobacco products. But things like the biologicals and medical devices, we do not, but there are groups out there, and EAS Consulting has people that can help you with that. I think I'm going too fast here. Hang on, folks. There we go. So what we have found over the last 10 years or so is that the FDA has seen that we are importing more products into this country every year for various reasons: cost of production in the United States, lack of materials required to support the consumption in the United States, and it's an ever-growing thing. And the FDA, with its limited resources, has to have ways to monitor these imports for purposes of food safety, especially in this case. When you bring a product into the United States, if the FDA has a hold on the product or it has a detention on the product must be held and not brought out into commerce prior to authorization by the FDA for release. So this could be into a storage warehouse, a freezer warehouse. It has to be set aside and held until such time as the FDA allows it to be released. This can be costly to a lot of importers. So the best thing you can do is what Sergio talked about, and that is do your due diligence in advance. Know what you can expect when the product comes into the United States, and if the FDA is going to be monitoring this. There are a lot of products that are not what they call low-hanging fruit. They're typically produced in sanitary conditions. They have the factories that they're coming from have good HACCP plans, good production plans, good safety programs, and those products just run through the United States without being looked at by the FDA. Other countries, other production facilities, the FDA has inspectors around the world that go into these factories and do inspections, and they report that back to DIOP, where they will determine whether a factory or a country of origin is having any issues. And when they do bring products to the United States, those are the ones they're going to be looking at for more action. So what is a FDA regulated product, or how is it refused? There are a few things that are key to this, and that is through these import alerts we talked about. Is the product adulterated in any way? Meaning, is it contaminated? It's not safe or unapproved and doesn't otherwise meet the standards of FDA for good manufacturing practices. A big thing that we're seeing lately is labeling issues. It's difficult to stay on top of the changes that are going on with labeling. People want to put things on their labels that aren't allowed. They're not formatted properly, and the FDA will stop it and have you either relabel the product or they will refuse it. If your product is refused by the FDA, you have 90 days either to destroy it or show that you brought the product into compliance. So the agency has DWPE, detention without physical examination, which simply means that the product at some point in time, either by testing by the FDA, on random testing by the FDA, has shown that the product has been volatile of in some way, whether it's a contamination of salmonella, listeria, antibiotic residues. And so you will be put on that manufacturer will be put on the red list, automatically detained each time they bring the product into the country. so you will not be able to distribute this product into the US if you're detained prior to having a third-party laboratory do an analysis to prove that the product is within compliance. And the reason for this is the FDA has limited resources, and we bring in thousands and thousands of containers every year in the United States. They just simply don't have the manpower to check every load. So they have this predict system that allows them to, again, look at the low-hanging fruit, find out what's most probable in having issues, and that's where they focus their attentions and resources. So when you look at an import alert, there are several different types of alerts. And when the link that was shared earlier will show that there are countrywide alerts, meaning any product coming from that country will be detained. The example is there are cheeses from France. Any of these cheeses from France will be automatically detained. Going back to the red list, green list, if a company in France has proven that they have a good manufacturing practice and they've brought in a minimum of 5 containers that have shown that they are not in violation, they'll be put on the green list and can ship product into the United States without delay. Manufacturers of various products have the same situation. So if you have, as a manufacturer, been found violative, you will have to bring in 5 containers simultaneous, and they have to be normal containers. You cannot just ship 100 pounds of product to try to get off of a red list. You have to go through a typical shipment, 5 typical shipments, and those shipments will be tested by a laboratory, independent laboratory, and reported back to the FDA. And those 5 shipments will be cleared, and then there's a process for getting off of that red list. You can petition for that, and we'll get to that later. So there's countrywide alerts, there's manufacturer alerts, there are shipper alerts, and there are countrywide alerts. And this is just a brief description of the sections within an import alert. And we've kind of gone over this already, but there's a slide to kind of that gives you an overview. So again, what is a red list? Red list means that a firm or product or country are subject to detention without physical examination under the import alert. And a green list is firms or products that have met the criteria for exemption from the import alert. That's where you want to be. So going back again to the resources that the FDA has, they have a lot of obligation to try to keep the country safe, to make sure that the foods that are coming into the United States are safe. And it's through these import alerts that they can utilize their resources to minimize the number of shipments that have to be detained. I personally believe that they are short on their resources, and more of these containers should be examined, but unfortunately, it's only about 2 to 3%. And we have been doing this for the FDA for over 40 years and have a very good understanding of how this is to be done. So what we do is this. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on how it works for a laboratory. We have a checklist. So these are the documents that are required by the FDA when we're going to, if you're going to hire a laboratory. The laboratory has to have these forms in its submission package, and that is the notice of action, which you would receive if there's going to be a detention, the packing list, the commercial invoice, and the warehouse tally, wherever it's located, where the product is located, and if there's any identifiers in the warehouse that say where the product is within the warehouse. We will then review these documents, and we'll send what's called an order confirmation. Now we have samplers that we have throughout the country, as some other laboratories do as well, and we write up what's called a collection report based on the packing list, in the commercial invoice, there is a criteria that FDA has put together as to how many portions of each line we have to collect. And this will be determined by the packing list in the commercial invoice. We're looking at lot numbers, production lot numbers. If there are various lot numbers, depending on the import alert, we may have to collect from each lot number. This can get very expensive. And I try to advise people, if you're going to bring product into the United States, try to minimize two things. One, the number of lines of product that you're bringing in, and two, the number of production codes included in that shipment. Because the FDA has been pushing more and more that each production lot needs to be sampled and tested individually. This could get very expensive for multiple line entries. So I try to tell people to minimize that as best you can. The collection report and collection process is something that everybody seems to want to do on their own. And although it's allowed, it's not recommended. We have certified collection personnel that know how to do this. The requirements are that we are able to see the entire shipment at the warehouse or the freezer. We have to take photographs of each case and product that we are collecting from, and with labels. The information that's required in these photographs are the nutritional labels and any information on the containers. So each side of a box, if it has a production lot on it, they want to see that lot number. They want to know that we are collecting everything from this shipment that will fall within their criteria. So we have, like I said, we have our own samplers. We also use third-party samplers, and you can see where it says we have a collection report. We have labels that have to be placed on each product, so that in these photographs, the FDA can see exactly what we've done. One of the issues going on now with the delays in our shipments coming to the United States, especially the containers sitting off of Los Angeles, is that making an appointment, and the fact that with COVID, where a lot of people are short-staffed, we're having trouble getting into these warehouses because they simply don't have the staff to allow us. So there are delays, and you need to put that into your business plan to understand that coming to the United States right now, where if you were typically getting your product in a week or two, we're looking at sometimes 3-4 weeks to get product into your warehouses. And in the warehouses, giving us appointments to get in to get the sampling done has been more and more difficult. Hopefully this will change as COVID starts to wean off. So again, the sampling is done based on FDA guidelines. Pictures are taken of the entire process. This photo report, as we call it, is also part of our submission package to the FDA. Each carton and each product has to be labeled. Once the samples are received in-house, then we upload a collection report. As we are conducting the testing in the laboratory, we are collecting documents to put into this report. Now, this includes the collection report, the photo report. Each of our analysts' training CVs have to be uploaded into this packet. Each piece of equipment that touches the analysis, the calibration for that equipment has to be included. And an example is if we have a fruit coming out of Mexico for salmonella, that package of submission that's going to the FDA could exceed 100 pages for one simple analysis. If it's an antibiotic residue, for instance, it could be upwards of 400 pages. So once the analysis is done, we'll put the packet together. We will send what's called an importer's statement. Now, this says that you have not taken product and had it tested by multiple laboratories. And if you did, you have to claim this on this form. So is this the first, second, or third time you've had this tested? Some laboratories try to do this process and they're simply not qualified. And you have to seek a second laboratory to get this process done. You have to claim the fact that you used a laboratory the first time and the submission was likely rejected. So that information has to be clarified and notified. The FDA needs to be notified of this. Right now, as it stands, any analysis that's been done by a laboratory, that analysis belongs to the importer. It doesn't. We do not have to report to the FDA as it stands today. That may change in the very near future. There's some new regulations that are being worked on, and until you give us authorization, we do not report to the FDA. Once you have given us the authorization, we then take the package and we upload it into the FDA ITACs, which is their online portal, where the package and information is sent to the FDA, and their scientists then review our documentation to ensure that our analysis was done properly. And that's all I have for now. There's a lot more that we could talk about, but as it stands, we can only do so much in one webinar. So I'm going to turn this over to Angel.
Okay, let me go back here. Well, excuse me. Basically, I am one of the independent consultants in EIS. We have a large group of consultants that deal with a lot of products in FDA, as I previously said. Import itself is not easy as it looks like. A lot of people in the past used to say, well, I can import from X country and I can get into the United States and sell it at a better price to get my income, but it's not anymore. So several years ago, when FSMA, which is the Food Safety Modernization Act, started, and I'd say 15 years ago, more or less, it was to ensure that the U.S. food supply is safe from shifting from the federal regulators from responding to contamination to prevent it. And this gave more a mandate to FDA to an additional preventive controls to ensure food safety. So FSMA initiated with 4 goals. It's really based on 4 goals. Number 1 is food offer from import meet the U.S. safety requirements. And that is to optimize the use, FDA use of the foreign facility inspection to allocate resources from other sites and risk, and also holds the foreign suppliers to a U.S. safety standard and imported to a food supplier verification requirements. The second goal is borders surveillance, and normally that is FDA tends to have our field operation, field operations that do the import screening and the entry review process. The rapid and effective response to unsafe, it's maximize the effectiveness of FDA to involvement of a import food product, and to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of for food safety recalls. And the last one, goal 4, is effective and fit import program, is to, like Dean said, is to more dedicated to the resource allocation and to develop, ensure effectiveness of import activity through the performance of continuous improvement. That's basically what FSMA brought into, and now is the new, the import food strategy itself. This picture here is mostly show you it's how the FSMA and the foreign domestic food oversight, it's done in today, looking at a very general perspective. For example, you have a product safety rule, which is the top ones. Then you have the border surveillance, which is in the United States, will be mostly in the domestic surveillance. Then it goes to foreign supplier verification, import certification, foreign regulatory cooperation, third-party audits, and foreign facility inspection, mostly in the import side. In the United States domestic, well, we do the incident response facility, and we have the local state and local regulators providing some of the information to FDA on a daily basis. So I'm going to focus now on the import refusal, detention without physical examination, import alert removal, foreign supplier verification program. Sergio presented several things and Dean talked about the different parts of what FDA takes in the compliance action. And this is my job, is to work with the importer into bringing the the product or the facility, if it's a foreign facility for the foreign supplier verification program, into the compliance of FDA is expecting. So in import refusal, it's always started with a FDA notice of action. It's normally sent to the filer, the importer, owner of the consignee. Normally, this notice of action have a specific nature of the violation. Like and the burden of proof is, like, for example, see refusal admission pursuant to section 801A3, that it appears to bear uncontained unsafe food additive, INS 900 alpha, which it could be that food additive could be a listing from a foreign source, not or another product itself. So they list, in this case, it was cochineal carmine, which is the food additive involved in this particular section. And they normally tells you what is the nature of your violation. Then you have various options. You're entitled to an informal hearing to provide testimony, and this is to discuss with FDA regarding the admissibility of the product. You have the right, you will submit evidence of that product is in compliance. Some of that evidence will be either label review or laboratory analysis itself, depending on how is the refusal it tells and presented. And if you fail to submit this evidence or plan to bring or fail to plan to bring the product into compliance, you only have two options. One option to destroy the product under FDA and CBP supervision, and there are charges for that because normally FDA will send a person to supervise that or CBP. There is export the product under FDA and CBP supervision. Now, this is a little bit more into specific parts of the law, which is 801E1, which explains 4 areas of evidence that need to be presented. And that is when you need to contact us to discuss this, because maybe you may have to take the route of destruction, or you may have the export of the product may be required to contact the country that is going to accept that and other guidelines. I have a case where Listeria, for example, was refused from the United States because FDA have 0 tolerance, but the EU have a different tolerance level for product ready to eat with Listeria. So the issue that hold the product, and this is prior to COVID, was that the imported country, their custom agents wanted to have more paperwork than it was required, that normally will require, but they want to assure the safety of that product because they don't want a product that is being refused by FDA. Once they see a refusal from FDA, they want to have more information. A refusal is normally a final decision, unless there are some times that it may be rescinded because FDA found that they have made an error. That's very seldom. It's not all the time, but needs to be discussed. And then FDA, if people ask, give me an extension for beyond the 90 days. Well, FDA have no authority to grant such extensions. Normally, you have to deal with the local CBP office to extend in the 90 days period. To my knowledge, very few cases are extended by CBP also, because they don't want to be looking at the paper back and forth about following this in 90 days. And with the whole resources there, it might be difficult today to keep extending more than the period of time. Now, the import extension, like Dean said, it could be adulterated, the product, misbranded. It could be an unapproved drug. It could be a problem with the manufacturing process or packed under a sanitary condition, or is forbidden or restricted on sale in a country which was produced or from in which it was exported. Those are the part that deals with the import detention in general. You can, so this is one of the areas that I look all the time as a consultant. Normally, import detention goes with the notice of detention and hearing, which you have a respond by date. And this is very important because many companies call EIS for helping how to respond, and the date is a day before or the same date. Well, it's very difficult for us sometimes to issue a request to FDA, depending on the case, and ask them to hold it and give us an extension or allow us to discuss with them further. So it is important once you receive from your broker or you and that you have a notice of detention and hearing for the cause of import detention, you look at that respond date, and if you have questions like Sergio said, and you have to do this, then you better look for a consultant, because this is important that we address this issue as soon as possible. And normally the hearing have the law and regulation no different than the import refusal. It tells you everything that from the beginning why your product is under the detention and hearing. Now you have options to include, you have to submit evidence to overcome disappearance of the violation, and you can submit a request to recondition the product to correct the violation, depending on what is the type of recondition required. If it's, for example, labeling, then one of the EIS consultant expert in labeling and nutrition could be needs to review your labels, make the recommendations back to the firm and correct those. And it could be a provisional placing depending on the product, placing a new label on the product itself. Other times, it may not, and this is also a question, FDA will look into the reconditioning that you're submitting, because if they are not satisfied with the proposal that you're submitting, then it will be rejected and they will proceed with the refusal. So this is very important also to work with your consultants in this area. Detention without physical examination is normally a recommendation to the district of future shipment of products offer that appears to be violative. And I said appears always here, because the burden of proof under the import FDA, it's appear is the wording used in the law, and is a burden of proof less than other cases on FDA where it requires more hardcore evidence. An example could be if you have a swollen can and the import inspector goes to the warehouse and sees swollen and leaking cans, he doesn't have to normally take the sample itself. If he could take photographs and present his report to the supervision, and it says this is a swollen and leaking cans and appears to be violative under the meaning of the Section A, is adulterated, and it violates low acid canned food regulations and something similar to that, because it's a process issue. in the manufacturer. Also, it's evidence of product of a specific geographic area, country, like and they said, Dean said previously, it poses a health hazard and appear those standards. And the importation of violative article has resulted in the issuance of a warning letter to the import with no subsequent response. Normally, the warning letter lately I've seen more is related to foreign supply verification. If you fail to respond correctly, FDA moves to first send you the warning letter after that inspection, and it proceeds from there. So it's very important to, once you receive a warning letter from FDA, is also to work with your consultant or a person who have knowledge into this area, because FDA will be looking for you as to how you respond and going to solve the problem of adulteration. A lot of information received on the import for import detention. The FDA received from multiple agencies, including CBP, the states. There are other ways FDA receives from consumers, trade complaints that they look into the imports, establishing inspections for manufacturers. Like Dean said, FDA last year, because of COVID, there were less inspections on foreign manufacturers. However, this year, FDA is moving toward in the domestic side more, but then eventually it will increase to go into the foreign manufacturers itself. And there's the final is the reason to believe or evidence has supported in the past that future shipments or product or class appears to be by in their section 801A. And 801 is the section in FDA under the law that that deals everything with imports itself. Now, the import alert is really informed if FDA import staff and the public agency have enough evidence to allow the detention without physical examination of the product. And like Dean Sergio said before, there is a web link in the previous where you can look into what types of DWPEs are listed by FDA. Some of them are by country, some of them by product in different categories. I look into, when a client comes to here, I look into what they have, whether they are in the import detention DWPE on the alert, what type of products are being involved. So there is a lot of information that I look into when a client comes into EIS to look for in order to provide the guidance that the importer needs in order to resolve the problem. A red list normally is the country-wide, and the green list, if you are looking for example, a specific country, manufacturing in a country, that has to go through a different process of how to apply and appeal to FDA to be added to the green list. It's not an easy process. It can be done, but it's not an easy process. It's a time consuming because a lot of evidence needs to be gathered. For example, in melamine, China is in the red alert. However, if you want to have your product which has melamine, then you have to collect, for example, the certified lab group, or any other lab does the sampling itself and examine, and they say it's free, then it's sent to FDA, and your product is going to be released for one time. So every shipment, for example, in the melamine, every shipment you bring that is the product is subject to melamine or contaminated is going to be needs to be sampled by a private laboratory, and FDA and the evidence of the lab is the one that. So it might take, and then it needs to have its previous question is how many lines. Well, if they look at your import entry as one entity itself, or so it has to be commercial shipments. They may look all of them and then, but that will be one count, and then you have to continue the future ones, and it has to be continuous that you are free of the violation. If you have in between, for example, in number 3, you have a violative product, you start all over again. So it is very important to keep in mind that it's not an easy process itself to be removed from import. This is the removal, for example, I was saying is the company must submit a petition to FDA detailing how you identify the source of the problem and how it's implementing the specific corrective action that prevent future violations. At any time, FDA that import entry submitted, at any time they could take a random sample of your product and test it on their own labs. But in the private, they will rely in some times with the private laboratory analysis, because like Dean said, it is the lab has to provide a very extensive information to FDA to demonstrate that the product is have no violation. Now, the foreign supplier verification program is based on FDA has different priorities. One, the priority one is the compliant history. The non-compliance include recall, class 4, and microbiological finding of official action, and foodborne illness outbreak. The second priority on the foreign supplier verification will be high-risk foods. This is ready to eat, undeclared food allergens. Food requiring process control, like sample pasteurization, refrigeration. This is when the inspector goes to your facility itself and do an inspection for FSBP. And they're looking at to that particular area of the foods. So they may ask you when they go to your facility, and they ask you what product you bring, and they already have an idea what product you bring, because they have FDA, every time you do a declaration, FDA have a system, their system can gather the data, and they already have that information into the planning of the inspection. Normally what they're asking is when they said, give me the information, or give me your FSBP document for this particular product, they're looking if you have one or not there. And then they're looking at other priorities that will be number of different food imported by the importer, numbers of suppliers which you're importing food, and the volume value of the lines that are submitted. Now, you as an importer are required under the FSBP to do a risk-based activity to verify that the food you're importing is produced in a manner that meets applicable U.S. safety standards. If the EAS have a team of also in this area that we can advise you on FSBP itself and what we do, what needs to be done on this area itself based on the risk activities. And what we normally perform is an audit of your facilities, work with you. Normally the process is after they do the inspection, the import company is placed on a notice from the FDA and said that you are not having FSBP if you fail to have the inspection or what, and to this is the warning letter, specific language, and then they will tell you in the language of the warning letter that it says failure to follow FSBP, and they be very specific to what they found on the inspection. That is not also on that particular products they review, but that may include all the products that it may be considered under the risk-based activities. So you have to be looking into the particulars into that area, and that's sometimes what consultants like in EAS could work with you. The information, it's how you present. We work on the documentation of in evaluation of your corrections, whether these are going to demonstrate that you have a good FSVP program or not, or you have a good records itself. Other additional information could be considered relevant to demonstrate the compliance with FSVP. And normally the warning letter, you only have 15 days, working days to receive the warning letter. So this is that's just the reason you need to be on top of the FSVP inspections and how to respond to FDA. Now, if you fail to address the FDA, they will be sending another information. The letter itself will say that if you fail, it will detain or refuse violative entries on any import and place you in import alert. That means that if you fail to respond or provide the information FDA have, the FDA will be initiating the refusal admission for future entries for those particular products. Import alert 9941 is the one that deals with the requirement, the import alert for foreign suppliers that are not in compliance with the FSVP program. And that's all what I have right now. We can proceed with other things. And here is all our information about how you contact us from the different presenters. Amy, back to you.
Thank you all so much for a great presentation. And I know we've run 5 minutes over, so let's get right started to the questions. First question is, who creates the number of lines on an entry?
I think I could take that one.
Okay.
And this came from Scott Zimmerman. So Scott, with regards to this, the lines that are created is based off of the data transmitted through the ACE system. That information is based off of the paperwork submitted, and it's supposed to be segregated and disseminated based off of how similar each product is. Therefore, if you have, I like using mahi for some reason. I love eating it. So mahi can have different sizes, and because it's packed in different sizes, you would then have to, besides your one harmonized tariff schedule code you submit to customs, in that harmonized tariff code folder that you're submitting to customs, you would then add each line with the weights and the values and the supplier associated to each line. Hope that answers your question.
Perfect, thanks. Let's keep moving. And I think, Dean, the next one might be for you. What can a manufacturer exporter do to make sure they're on the green list if they're not on any list to begin with?
Yeah, there is, like we said, there is a published import alert list. You can look at the country of origin. You can do a control F for a find on any import alert. Type in the manufacturer's name, and if they are on this list, whether it be red or green, depending on the import alert, that will show their status. It can be a little confusing sometimes because some import alerts only only red list, and some import alerts are only green list. So if you're if it's on the green list, you're clear. If it's not on the green list, you'll likely be detained, and vice versa for the red list.
Next question, this one on Hill might be one you can take. Which documents for each shipment must be originals and which can be copies? Should they be attached to the shipment, such as COOs or CITES documents that require signatures?
Well, normally the documents are the documents you provide to your import broker, and these will be considered originals once that you receive, the import broker receive them and you facilitate. If you receive them via as an attachment from your supplier, foreign manufacturer, that can be supplied to FDA too. Really, what the FDA is looking is to the documentation that matches from the original entry that the broker provides. So if you have those documents, they consider a PDF copy from the foreign manufacturer could be the original. It doesn't need to be certified by any other entity. It's just happened that it has to match.
So one quick note to that also, when you're presenting those documents, I believe that came from Edward Fletcher. When you're presenting those documents, the documents that you're asking for, the Cites, that deals with product that, although is regulated by FDA, is also regulated by Fish and Wildlife. Fish and Wildlife documents, specifically the Cites documents, are required to be originals, and those must be submitted to the Fish and Wildlife office where there is an actual service port. Those are particular documents that can't be electronic and must be submitted because it's certified by different government agencies, and you're required to present it to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. The only other document that at times you may need to be originals would be if your clearance is being done with original bills of lading versus having a telex release associated with the importation, meaning that the cargo travels with a document which is considered an original bill of lading, which is kind of like title to the product, and whoever has the physical document has title to that product and has the right to then liberate that cargo from the port by presenting that document in order to be able to pick up your cargo. It's similar to a certified receipt, kind of like the way a car title is associated to each vehicle.
Great, thank you. And Sergio, there's a question that I think would be great for you, and it's from someone who has a question regarding UPS and FedEx and who is liable for importation of products that FedEx and UPS and other carriers would have them sign for. And additionally, the same person wants to know if they need an additional customs broker beyond the services provided by UPS and FedEx and others.
So I'm going to go back to my standard answer of it truly depends. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with UPS and FedEx, depending on how big of the shipments that there are, what UPS and FedEx is asking for you to sign over is a document that makes you the importer of record, which allows them to present clearance on your behalf if they are the broker, or if you're electing to use your own customs broker instead of using their own services. The reason why they're having you do that is the same way I, as a broker, would ask you for the same documentation. It's to be able to know who will be the responsible party, like I had mentioned in my slides, for import purposes, for customs and duties, and who will be the importer of record and responsible party for FDA. I hope that answers your question.
Perfect, thanks.
Sorry,
Dean,
if I could just add one additional piece.
Okay.
You mentioned I think this is Vanessa Velasco. You're asking if you need an additional customs broker. I would say if you have already cleared cargo and you have a good understanding of what you are required for your particular product, you can use the UPS or FedEx service. If you don't have an understanding, or if you're in a time-sensitive situation where you're bringing in fresh product, you tend to use a broker that's specialized in these types of products to avoid the slowdowns associated with dealing with such a large company like UPS and FedEx.
And Dean, the next question would be for you. We've got a couple of questions regarding lab testing and certified's capabilities to help foreign people in foreign countries test products they're importing into the US.
I'm sorry, I can't see the question. So what was the question?
Questions on certified services regarding testing for foreign companies that are exporting products to the US.
Yeah, the FDA does allow for you to send samples for testing only, not for entrance into commerce, to our laboratory to have it tested prior to your shipping product. That will not necessarily allow you to bring, because we test your product, it would only be for your purposes. This is not going to have any effect on what the FDA does when you have a shipment coming to the country. It's only for peace of mind.
Dina, if I can add to that, with regards to that, I believe that is Kimberly Vance. When you're dealing with R&D, one of the intended uses that can be submitted by the broker is that this is being brought in for another purpose other than for commercial purposes in the United States. If your broker is not submitting that information to the FDA doesn't know the difference between your R&D product and someone bringing in a commercial shipment.
Okay, thank you. And then Sergio, there's someone asking, what kind of questions do they ask to find the right customs broker? Does a list exist, or how do they find someone? Obviously, they can find you right here on their screen, but just generally, what kinds of questions should people ask when they're trying to find a good customs broker?
The first questions I would ask are immediately, one, do you deal with whatever product it is? Ask, what are the PGAs, the partner government agencies, and say it as PGAs because the broker should have that information. If they don't know what a partner government agency is, they're not dealing with anybody other than CBP. Two, ask them the similar questions that we're being asked. What are the original documents necessary for certain shipments? How do you transmit your information? Who's your software provider? All of these are common questions that you would ask in order to see if the broker has a good understanding of FDA products in order to ensure that you don't have any sort of an issue going forward.
Okay, perfect.
I would like to add something in there. It's electronically, almost all the transactions are done in the for CBP and FDA are electronic. Very few custom brokers are placing papers. So if they have the facility and to do this electronically, then and they answered your question, then it should be, you should consider whether you want to make business. Now, they said they are in paper. Now you may consider not having that because in paper review, it's a time consuming. That means FDA, they have to send the paperwork directly, papers to FDA office, and FDA import reviewer needs to review those pieces of paper one by one, and everything that needs to be ordered. Okay. So you have to do due diligence in that area. I have one here. Yes.
We only, so it's 2:15, so I don't want us to take too much more time. Let's take one more question. And it sounds like, Angel, you've got one identified. Is it the ones, we've got a number of people asking about FSVP.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's one here that says by Lodi React, and probably is, who is the required to have FSVP? Is the importer, the facility that received the product, is not the custom broker itself. The custom broker is only a conduit to submit the documentation for FDA for the clearance entry itself. But right. FSVP is the responsibility of the importer itself.
And we have a number of resources on FSVP, webinars, articles. So I'll include a few links in our wrap-up email for those who are interested in more information on what is required and how to develop. EAS, of course, offers numerous services related to FSVP, including reviewing to make sure yours is appropriate or helping you develop. If you do not have one, EAS acts as a qualified individual under FSVP, so lots of different services there. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So thanks everyone for joining us. Sorry again for running a little over. Lots of great information. We did record this, so hopefully next week I'll have this posted by Monday on the website, and you can review at that time and share with your colleagues. If you have any questions, of course, the contact information for our 3 presenters is on the screen. If somehow you lose track of that, just email me back and I'll be glad to put you in touch with anyone for any additional help. So thanks so much for joining us and have a great afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.